the next 2 weeks, my special guest is Itamar Marcus from Palestinian Media Watch. Now, Itamar, what is Palestinian Media Watch?
We were founded 11 years ago. The goal is to find out what Palestinians were saying amongst themselves in Arabic. We'd known what they were saying in English to the media. We knew what they were saying to negotiators. We wanted to know what were they saying amongst themselves, with a particular focus on what they were saying to their children. Because what they were saying to their children, we believed, was both an indication of the true beliefs, as well as an indicator of if we would have peace, of whether we would have peace in the next generation.
So how powerful is the Palestinian media?
Palestinian media is a powerful force for us. We use the media not really to analyze the media as much as to window into all of Palestinian society, to see what's happening in their internal world. And I'll give you an example why I say we're not really studying the media, but the world. We have had dozens, hundreds of examples of sporting events which are used to promote suicide terror for young children. So, for example, there was a football tournament, a soccer tournament for 14-year-old boys in the school system, and it was named the Abdul Basir Udeh Championship Cup. Abdul Basir Udeh was a suicide terrorist who killed 31 Israelis at a Passover Seder. So the tournament was named after him. Each of the teams participating was also named after a different terrorist. And the article ended that Issam, the brother of the martyr, of the killer of the 31, he was the one who distributed the trophy. So you have an entire sporting event revolving around glorifying suicide terror. And it's in the school system under the Ministry of Education. It's a 14-year-old boys. So for us, the media is a window to society. We have dozens and dozens, like I said, even hundreds of examples of sporting events used to promote hatred and terror. One of the most recent heroes for sporting event naming is Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein, because he fought the West, because he fought the United States and the Europeans, who were seen as, from Palestinians, as the enemies of the Arab and Muslim worlds. So Saddam Hussein is a hero. So we've had 2 soccer tournaments named after Saddam Hussein. We've had a basketball tournament named after him. We've had streets named after him, schools named after him. Saddam Hussein, then we see, becomes a role model for other Palestinians as someone who should hate the West.
So what sort of other things do they broadcast on the Palestinian media?
Well, Palestinian media gives messages to children and adults, promoting violence, promoting hatred. I mean, they're incessant libels about Israel and about Jews, so that if you were Palestinian, you would hate Israelis and Jews because of these libels. And I say libels are visual libels if you're talking about media. So, for example, they took a picture of an Israeli helicopter once, and they had a little girl then walking down the street, an actress, and they made it seem like the Israeli helicopter, the girl then falls down on the ground and her bag goes falling off. And it looks like the Israeli helicopter, it's obviously completely staged, but they're trying to give the impression for children that Israeli helicopters are targeting you when you walk to school. There was another one where they had Palestinian boys playing soccer. An Israeli soldier tries to steal their ball and they refuse, so he gets his rifle and he shoots at them. Another one, and these are clips that would run over and over and over again for years. There's another one where Palestinian boys are playing with a soccer ball and it explodes while they're playing. There's another one, a girl's on a swing and all of a sudden the swing is in flames and the girl is gone. So they have others where Israelis take an old man, throw him on the ground. Again, these all actors, and they shoot the guy in the head while he's lying on the ground. All libelous hate for the purpose of promoting hatred amongst their children. There are different components of the hatred. There's the hatred on the level of Israelis are killing. There's also the hatred on the ideological level that Israel is the enemy of Allah, Israel's the enemy of Islam. Islam demands the murder of Jews, according to what we've heard on Palestinian TV. Now, of course, Islam doesn't have to be interpreted this way, but we have heard dozens and dozens of times on Palestinian television by the Fatah television, not the so-called extremist Hamas, but the so-called moderate Fatah. And their religious leaders have said that there is a religious obligation to kill Jews. And not only is there an obligation, but that if you kill the Jews, that is one of the conditions for the bringing of the hour of redemption, the hour of resurrection, so that you then the murder and the genocide of Jews has been packaged not only as God's will, but as a condition for redeeming humanity. So the Jew becomes the impediment to humanity's redemption. Just by our existence, we're an impediment. And this is Palestinian television. So it's giving terrible hate messages, both in the mosques, but even on children's broadcasting, they're all getting these hate messages.
I was going to ask about the children. Now, children are an important part of society. How are children being targeted in the schools and their school books?
School books is a major, major problem. The school books teach Palestinian children. I'm talking about the newest school books. Just came out this past year for 12th grade. Teach the children that their war with Israel is a religious war for Allah. It's not territorial. They're taught that the war is eternal against Israel. Not until there's a peace treaty, but until the resurrection. So when Palestinian children are told that Israel must be destroyed because God wants it, they're told that also in the school books they have expressions like Palestine's war in 1948 ended when the Zionist gangs stole Palestine and created the state of Israel. So Israel is called Zionist gangs. Israel has no right to exist. Allah wants them destroyed. You package all this for the Palestinian child, and of course, he's not given a free choice. He is told that you either have to accept what your God wants, or you can accept Israel as a neighbor. You cannot have both, and that's not a real choice for a religious society. So that Palestinian children are not given a choice. They're told God wants them to destroy Israel.
I remember Golda Meir was saying that the Palestinians need to love their children more than they hate Israel. So is this Palestinian cause Palestinian, or is it an Islamic cause?
It's a very strong combination of both. In the most recent polls, we've seen there was a poll, for example, done by Birzeit University. I can't remember the date exactly, within the last few years, and they asked Palestinians what was the content, what would be important in a new Palestinian state, and over 50% said Islam, another 20 or 30% said democracy, another 15 or 20% said socialism, and 5% said Arab nationalism. In another poll in the end of 2005, Palestinians, I think it was 78% said they wanted Sharia law. In another poll we had, and these are all Palestinian internal polls, not polls that we take. These are polls that they take and then they're reported in the internet or in the newspapers. There's another poll where Palestinians were asked if they were in favor of hand amputations for thieves, and 51% said they wanted it then. Another 30% said they wanted it, but only under better conditions, meaning better judicial conditions. They didn't trust the judiciary, and only 20% were against hand amputations. Now, that's a very, very Islamic society. So, and that's where the danger is. The danger is not that they're focusing on Islam. That's a free choice. But when you have a very Islamic society and they're packaging Islam as calling for the genocide of Jews, those two components together, you have a very dangerous situation. Now, it's not just against the Jews, it's against the West, against the Christian world as well. And I'll just give you a quote from a person named Ibrahim Dairis, a sheikh who was a very popular sheikh giving sermons on official Palestinian television. He was doing 60% of them or so in the year 2003, 2004, 2005. And Mudairis said, he went through this whole sermon, a very, very hateful sermon against the West, against Jews, and then he said, Islam ruled the world, we will rule the world again, we will rule America, we'll rule Britain, we'll rule the entire world. Now this is mainstream Fatah religious ideology, that Islam will rule over all the other religions, will rule all over all the other countries. And in other words, the problem is not Islam. If Islam wants to live side by side with Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, with other religions, then there's nothing wrong. But the Islam that's being taught by the Palestinians to their people is that Islam will dominate, rule, and destroy all the others. And if that's the Islam, then it becomes very dangerous.
So this is becoming a doctrinal and a cultural issue.
Absolutely. It's the Palestinians, it started years ago. It seemed to be, it was perceived, at least Yasser Arafat in the original PLO charter, which calls for Israel's destruction, there was no mention of God. It wasn't a religious. This was 1965, and the entire packaging of that charter was nationalistic. Israel had to be destroyed, replaced by Palestine. Didn't mention Allah once. Didn't mention the Quran once. Didn't mention the Hadith The Hamas charter, on the other hand, which was done in 1988, had over 130 references to Allah, 30, 40 references, quotes from the Quran. The entire charter is a religious document. And let's not forget that the Hamas won the last election, had 55% or so of the seats in parliament. So what you're talking about is a major, major shift in Palestinian ideology from what was a secular sort of ideology to a very, very religious society today. And again, that religion is being packaged as a religion, as Islamic supremacist religion, where they have to dominate, destroy not just Israel and the Jews, but they have to dominate and subjugate the Christian world as well.
So you talk about children being targeted particularly. That makes it sound as though there could never really be peace, because once you're targeting children, you're bringing up a new generation with hatred.
Absolutely, and this is the great danger. The children, and here, for example, there was a poll recently. Palestinians were asked, do you recognize Israel's right to exist? So the oldest people who were polled, people 50, 60 and above, I think it was 40% didn't recognize Israel's right to exist. But the youth, age 18 to 25, 88% rejected Israel's right to exist. So you've got an entire generation of youth who are much, much more hateful than their parents and their grandparents. And this is true not just because of the polls don't just show it, just because of the reality. Before the Palestinian Authority was established in 1993, 1994, and before terror was part of their state ideology, and before the borders were open, somebody could drive from Gaza to the Golan. He'll meet Israelis on the way. If someone was sick, they'd go to an Israeli hospital. If someone had a problem with their employer, they'd go to an Israeli court. And all of this taught Palestinians great Western values and Judeo-Christian values of acceptance, tolerance. Unfortunately, since the establishment of the Palestinian Authority, which was supposed to be a peace process, the leadership of the Palestinians under Yasser Arafat made it into a hate process, made it into a war process. And they told their people that it's a process that will eventually destroy Israel. This is not a long-term peace process. This is a process to create a bridgehead so that we can continue fighting Israel from the inside, from the land, and not having to fight them from Tunisia, where the PLO had been.
Now, the typical age of a suicide bomber is about 21 and male. Why does someone become a suicide bomber?
The Palestinians have promoted the Shahada concept. Shahada means dying for Allah, means your death is Allah's witness that your death was for him. According to classical Islam and the ancient traditions, the person who dies as shaheed is rewarded in paradise. He's the closest to Allah in heaven after the prophets, and he receives many, many rewards. His family, who stays behind, receives many rewards, and one of those rewards, for example, as everybody laughs about it, but it is true, they teach that he receives the 72 dark-eyed maidens of paradise, the virgins of paradise, as a reward. Now, the Quran doesn't say this explicitly. The Quran, though, does talk about a reward for people who will go in Allah's way. In I think 4 or 5 different places it mentions that they will be getting young maidens, pure young women, and later tradition has evolved this entire message of dying for Allah, which also is mentioned in the Quran, but dying for Allah, that Allah takes care of you, and he takes care of you with these virgins. Now this to the West, now it seems like a side issue, because in the West it seems so strange that we ignore it, and we use it as a joke. But you have to understand, the Palestinians take this very seriously, and the young men believe that that's what's awaiting them. And I say, why do I say this? Because in their farewell videos that they leave, we have young men, saying goodbye to the world, goodbye to their parents, asking their parents to join them in their wedding to the 72 virgins of paradise. We've had mothers saying that they celebrate their sons' shahada death, their son's martyrdom death, because it's a wedding, and they give out sweets. We have the quotes of the mothers on TV. We have a woman who went on a suicide attack, was caught by Israel, and then interviewed from an Israeli jail. And she said, she was asked what her reward would be, and she said, I would be one of the maidens who would marry would marry the next shaheed. So what you have is, you ask, why would someone be, to us, if you want to understand the culture, you have to put on their glasses and look at the world through their eyes and their beliefs. To us, it seems absurd to believe these things, that a person's getting all these physical rewards. But yet, this is what they believe, and that is a major part of the motivation, are these great rewards.
So I'm a Christian and I believe my fundamentals about Christianity, and so they obviously believe this is a fundamental, and it's a doctrine that they can hold on to and accept, and it gives them life for the future.
Yes, that's the thing. It gives them, by the way, it's not just the adults who were given promised this life in the future. Children are likewise brainwashed. The children aren't being brainwashed with things like the 72 virgins, but the children are brainwashed in the school books, on television, music videos that would run thousands of times. So, for example, there's a music video. Started running in December 2000 and ran through 2003. And this video again, it was probably on 1,000 times or more. It's more than 1,000 times on Palestinian television. You have a boy who's an actor playing Mohammed Al-Dura. Now, Mohammed Al-Dura was the boy who was killed in the crossfire. He is a famous dead child. He calls on other children to follow him to paradise. Literally. And then you have films of this boy actor. He's playing with a kite. He's going to a Ferris wheel. He has an amusement park in Child's Paradise. And the key here is he's calling children to follow him. This is official TV. Telling children, you might have a bad time in Gaza, but if you follow Mohammed Al-Dura, you're going to run in green pastures, run on the beach, you'll have a kite, and you'll be able to go on a Ferris wheel, which you certainly never did in your whole life. All you have to do is be a shaheed. This was Palestinian Authority brainwashing. When I showed this at a hearing in the United States Senate, Hillary Clinton, who was at the hearing, said this was child abuse. The chairman of the committee, Al Inspector, said this was civilization abuse. And I said this film continued until 2003, the day after I showed this at the hearing, and the media really ripped into the Palestinians for brainwashing children to kill themselves. The next day it was taken off of Palestinian television.
So you have a website with all the evidence that you've been talking about. What is it for those who would like to have a look?
The website is palwatch.org, palwatch.org.
This week is part 2 of our conversation with Itamar Marcus from Palestinian Media Watch. I sat down with him and I asked him if he saw the Palestinian suicide bomber as victims themselves.
I don't see them as victims. I see these young children as victims, but every person at a certain point has to be responsible for their own choices, and anyone who is willing to kill anyone for any purpose other than serious self-defense, I do not have sympathy for, and I don't call them a victim.
How can mothers rejoice when they see their sons going out and killing innocent victims?
The mothers rejoice because they believe that the Jews, by our existence, are an impediment to world redemption, so that their sons, by doing this, are doing a service to humanity. I mean, just imagine. We've had videos, we've had things being said that Jews are like poisonous snakes, etc., and caricatures like this. Well, if we are a poisonous snake, I'll give you an example, better than a poison, I'll give you the own words. Ibrahim Diaries, on Palestinian television, the Jews are like an AIDS virus, going out and infecting the world. Those were his words. And he said, every conflict in the world is because of the Jews. The Jews, he said, were only 7 million, those were his numbers, and yet all the world's conflicts are because of the Jews. Now, if this is true, that the Jews are this AIDS virus, and all the conflicts in the world, all the killing in the world is because of Jews, then if your son goes and is willing to give his life to destroy Jews, then he is a wonderful person, because he is saving humanity by killing Jews. This is the mindset. You have to see the world through their mind. And so the mother celebrates her son's death. She knows that Allah is giving her son a great reward because he killed those evil Jews, and therefore she can celebrate her son's death.
Now, you're researching all this and looking into the Palestinian media. Do you feel there will be peace?
Unless the hate society that they have created is recognized, and unless the entire world, who for some reason collectively now have supported their cause, unless they tell them, you will not get a penny from us, you will not get a shekel from us, you will not get a pound from us, a euro from us, you won't get anything from us until you stop your hate society, until you teach your people, teach your children that Israel has been a state, has been a country and a people for thousands of years and has a right to exist in their land, and that you, the Palestinians, will be their neighbors, living in peace. If we hear that message, we have the beginning of a peace process. Let them put Israel on the map. Israel doesn't appear on the maps in the Palestinian Authority. It's all erased by Palestine, by a so-called Palestine, which they say will erase Israel. and this is active. It's on television daily. It's in the school books actively. So unless that happens, there will never be peace. Palestinian children today are growing up taught that they will continue fighting Israel, and they will continue fighting Israel. The only way peace will happen right now is if it's imposed militarily by Israel and by the rest of the world, who will condition their financial and political backing only on a real willingness to promote and teach peace by the Palestinians.
Now, America is trying to broker a peace deal at the moment, and Palestinians believe in something called a hudna. What is a hudna?
The Palestinians, or in general Muslims, see the life of Muhammad as the ideal life, and whatever he did is presented in the Quran as the ideal lifestyle, and also the ideal way to have conflict with other countries. Now, Muhammad was a conquering leader. He conquered tremendous amounts of lands and states. He conquered many tribes. And one of the things that he did was, when he came to Mecca, and he was unable to, and he saw that he would be unable to at that point defeat Mecca, he signed what's called now a hudna. He signed what's called the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. It was at a place called Hudaybiyah. It was a 10-year peace treaty with the Quraysh tribe of Mecca, that he wouldn't attack them. Well, 2 years later, he was stronger, and he went in and he attacked them, he conquered them. That 2-year period of signing a peace deal, so that you can strengthen yourself and eventually go and conquer the others, that is a hudna. And that's become the prototype. Today, the Palestinians have defined, well, when Israel is strong, we'll reach a hudna. During the hudna period, during the peace period, we will build up our arms, we'll build up our motivations, build up the hatred amongst the people, and then when everything's in place, then we can start the violence. That's what happened from 1994 till 2000. Arafat was in the hudna period. He built up arms, he built guns, and we have so much documentation of this in Palestinians in their own words. You have Faisal Husseini, for example, who referred to the Oslo Accords as a Trojan horse. Faisal Husseini, who was seen as the moderate Palestinian, who so many Westerners saw as a great moderate leader. Yet, right before he died, in one of his last interviews, he said that the Oslo Accords were a Trojan horse to get the Palestinians inside. And then he said what they called the Intifada, which was a terror war, a murderous terror war, they said that's the coming out of the Trojan horse. And this is the moderate. So that's the hudna. Hudna is deception. It's give the people a period of peace, build up your arms, and when ready, strike.
And does the West understand this? Do they realize this, what it means to this culture rather than the Western culture?
That is the greatest mistake the West makes and continues to make every single day, is that they continue to look at this conflict from their own values and their own perspectives. You've got some Israeli leaders who keep saying things like, all we have to do is give them a good job, and then they'll stop killing us. Give them more money, and they'll stop us. So they're encouraging the Europeans to give them money, encouraging the Americans to give them money. And as long as they have enough money, they won't want to fight us. That is so totally mistaken policy, because they're looking at the world from their values. Their value is a good job and good money, and I'm not going to want to hurt anybody. But the Islamic values that are being taught, that the good job and the good money is to make you stronger so that you can destroy the infidels and destroy Israel and do what Allah wants, because Allah is important, not Shimon Peres, who wants to give them the money. Allah wants them to be destroyed because this land is holy waqf. So it's true on the Israeli level, it's true on the global level as well, and this is something that the world has to recognize. There is a very radical political ideology out there. And I say political ideology, I'm not talking about the religious ideology that, of charity, etc., that exists within Islam. I'm talking about the political Islam, which sees itself as destined for Allah to subjugate the rest of the world, to put the burqa on people around the world, to have Canada, the United States, Europe, all living under Islamic rule. And there are many amongst the entire Muslim world who believe this. I can start with the extreme case of an Al-Qaeda who says it should be done today through conflict. And then you've got the slightly less extreme in terms of means, not in terms of goals. You've got the Muslim Brotherhood, who have branches all around the world. And the Muslim Brotherhood also believes in jihad, that this will be done through jihad, but they teach their people that today we have to establish the infrastructure. The jihad is not for today. It's coming shortly, within the next decade or so. Then aside from the Muslim Brotherhood, you've got people like Saudi Arabia, or countries like Saudi Arabia, the Wahhabis. They absolutely believe in subjugating the rest of the world under Islam. And they're doing it through what they call now a cultural war, a cultural jihad. According to some statistic which I recently heard, an official statistic, it's over $50 billion of Saudi money in the last few years has built mosques around the Western world, as well as financed Islamic education in Western universities and Islamic departments. And who are those professors who are going in? The people who they're sponsoring. So you've got Islam being taught all around the Western world in universities with full Islamic departments, being taught a very, very radical Islam. And what's the result? And this is their culture. That's the Wahhabis. You've got the Iranians who want to do it through possibly getting the atomic bomb, and then as soon as they would have enough of them, I think it's inevitable if they have the bomb, they will do what I like to, what I think should be best defined as atomic blackmail or nuclear blackmail. Nuclear blackmail would mean when the Iranians would have enough of these bombs, they would put them in a couple of suitcases and they would get them into 10 capitals in Europe and a couple of countries, and possibly in Ottawa, Toronto, Washington, New York, and LA, and they'll say, okay, we're in place. We've got these bombs all over the place. Now you either subjugate yourselves to what we want, or we're going to be blowing up cities all over the place, and you don't even know which cities, and we'll show you that. To show you that we're serious, we're going to blow up one, and they would do it. They would do it. They don't feel any. They are so convinced that God that they created in their own minds, that this God wants to destroy the infidels, and that therefore, if they destroy a few million people with a nuclear weapon in a crowded city, they're doing God's work. I mean, this is their belief. You must respect and be cautious and understand this. This is not a game for them. This is a drive. This is a destiny. We're thinking with our own Western glasses that would never dream of such a horror. For them, this isn't a horror. For them, this is fulfilling what God wants. And we have to be alert, and we can never allow those nuclear weapons to get into their hands, because then it's inevitable and will happen.
Now, as far as the media is concerned, are things being said in English for a Western audience, then in Arabic it's been said something else?
Certainly. Even, for example, just last week there was a suicide bombing in Dimona, and the Palestinian Authority to the world gave a condemnation. In fact, even to their own people, they gave a minor condemnation. In the same sentence, they talked about condemning Israel's attack in a Palestinian city that killed 2 senior terrorists, and the Palestinian attack that killed civilians, and were against it. But on the other hand, all of the daily newspapers said that the suicide bombers were shaheeds. Shaheeds are holy martyrs. Shaheeds, the person who's closest to Allah in heaven. They can't be holy martyrs if they did something negative. So that the official papers, under the control of the Palestinian Authority, are saying that the perpetrators of the murder, of the suicide terror attack in Dimona, are the highest people in Islam. They're next to Allah. So that obviously takes more weight than the superficial condemnation which they're giving to the rest of the world in English.
Now, a few years ago, Israel pulled out of the Gaza Strip for peace, and now they're receiving rocket attacks all the time. Do you think actually a peace deal would ever even work? Not by withdrawing, not by running away. Every time Israel withdraws after a barrage, after killing, the Palestinians are absolutely convinced in the success and in the value of terror. The reason the so-called Intifada, the terror war that started in the year 2000, started just a few months after Israel left Lebanon. Israel left Lebanon because of terror, even though there were terrorists there. We left Lebanon because of terror, and immediately, the Palestinians said, well, just what the Lebanese did. We realized the Israelis will run from terror. They don't call it terror, they call it resistance. And they immediately started planning the terror war, which they started just a few months later. The end of May 2000, Israel withdrew from Lebanon, and already in July, we publicized it. We knew that they were planning the next terror war, which they started in September. And they ran for a number of years. Israel mistakenly left Gaza under those conditions, and now they're convinced that terror is the way to go. Israel will run from terror. Unfortunately, the leadership to date does not understand it. They keep saying things, well, if we give them as a gesture, we give them more money, we give them more land, we give them more independence. So it is being interpreted just the opposite. It's being interpreted, terror is working. Let's go through. There's this cycle of terror and diplomacy. The cycle of terror diplomacy, and they talk about it all the time. The West doesn't understand this, and the Palestinians, the Arabs, the Muslims, they're using this, and we are losing at that war.
Now, what's your prayer for the Palestinian people?
That they should have a leadership, that will tell them and teach them that Israel is a neighbor, that Israel was a good neighbor to them, that in fact the only people who ever helped the Palestinians really were Israel, and that if they would just live in peace with us, we could have peace. By the way, this prayer for them is not totally taken out of a fantasy. Do you know that just after the Palestinian Authority was established, which means before the hate education had been established, before the hate had sunk in under the Arafat government, Palestinians were asked in 1996 to give grades to different places in the world in democracy and human rights? Well, your listeners will be very surprised, but the country the Palestinians gave the best grade to was Israel. They gave their own leadership 50% positive rating in democracy and human rights. France got 55%, the United States got 68% positive. Israel, 78% of Palestinians said Israel was positive for them in democracy and human rights. Now this is very significant. It showed that when the borders were open, when Palestinians met Israelis, they knew that Israelis were great neighbors. And in fact, the next year, in 1997, he did the poll again, the Palestinian pollster Khalil Shkaki, and it came out the same numbers. It wasn't 78%, it was 77%, which meant it was an authentic poll, it was a correct poll. The context of Palestinians weren't born hating Israel. Palestinians hate Israel today because they've been poisoned by their leadership with this constant barrage of hatred in the schools, hatred in the media, and then of course the terror war that their leadership started forced Israel to take defensive measures, which of course has increased the hatred. So we need a Palestinian leadership, and this is the prayer for them, who will reverse this trend, who will take all the arms that they gave to terrorists and melt them down into the industry that they should have built with it, and teach them that God doesn't want to destroy the Jewish people, because there are Muslim interpretations like that, and that's what they should be focusing on a moderate Islam that recognizes Christians' right to live, that recognizes Jews' right to live, that recognizes Islam as a religion among religions. If this could happen, then we could have peace. We haven't seen the beginnings of this. I don't see it on the way. And until that happens, the entire so-called peace process is totally mistaken. It's going in the wrong direction. It's not going to get us peace. It's not going to get us anywhere. And the world has to recognize that.
So you have a website with all the evidence that you've been talking about. What is it for those who would like to have a look?
The website is palwatch.org, palwatch.org.
Okay, Itamar, thank you very much.
You're very welcome.